It's a bright, crisp morning in the city, traffic buzzing like usual, with impatient drivers rushing through their daily routines. You're behind the wheel, tapping your fingers on the steering wheel, waiting for the green light. You've got places to be, things to do, and time is precious. But as the light turns green, something happens that causes you to immediately lose patience. In front of you, a senior citizen, slow, deliberate, and careful, begins crossing the street. It's clear they're not in a rush. The world slows down, and in that instant, you feel a mix of frustration and annoyance. You've got places to be, right? Why can't they just move a little faster? You honk. The sharp sound of the horn pierces through the morning air. You can't believe it's taking so long. The senior looks up at you, eyes meeting yours for a moment, but their pace doesn't change. The horn blares again. It's the kind of honk that makes everyone around you tense up. And that's when it happens. The senior finally gets across the street, and you drive away thinking, what a waste of time. But here's where the twist comes. The senior? They weren't just a random old person you encountered on your drive that day. They were someone who was watching, someone who had a history, and someone with connections you could never have predicted. Someone who was paying close attention to every single move you made. You thought you were just frustrated with a slow pedestrian, right?
Wrong.
What you didn't know was that the senior you honked at wasn't just another face in the crowd. They were watching you with the kind of calm focus that only comes from decades of experience, and that's where the story takes a turn you'll never see coming. Now, I know what you're thinking. This is just another story about road rage, right? Another tale of a quick honk, a moment of frustration, and a forgettable encounter. But trust me, this one's different. This is the kind of story that will make you rethink every time you feel like honking at someone in your life. The kind of story where what happens next will make you question whether you really know the people you pass every day. What if someone you least expect holds the power to change the course of your life in an instant? Stick with me here. I promise you, by the end of this video, you'll have the answer to the mystery behind that seemingly innocent honk. You'll discover the story of a senior with a surprising past and a connection to something far bigger than a single frustrating moment on the road. You'll learn how your actions can have consequences that you could never imagine, and just how small the world can be when fate decides to get involved. But here's where I need to pull you in. Imagine for a second that you're the driver. You honked, you moved on, and you never gave it a second thought. But what if I told you that the senior you were so quick to judge and get angry with has a past that's more intertwined with your own life than you could ever guess? That their connection to you isn't just about a simple misunderstanding on a street corner. No, there's something deeper here. Something hidden beneath the surface that you have no idea is about to surface. This isn't just a story about a honk, a slow pedestrian, and a moment of impatience. It's a story about power, influence, and the unexpected way life sometimes turns on a dime. It's about respect, and how a single moment of disrespect can lead to a chain of events you can't reverse. And most importantly, it's a story about how karma has a way of finding people, even when they least expect it. Are you ready to find out what happens when the person you least expect becomes the one who teaches you a lesson you'll never forget? But don't go anywhere yet. Before I give you the full story, let me tell you this. The senior who crossed that street didn't just make it across. They made it across with purpose. And as for you, well, you have no idea who is watching or what kind of consequences that seemingly small moment will set in motion. In the next few minutes, I'll walk you through the events that followed, and trust me, you're going to want to stick around. What happens next is going to challenge your perspective on road rage, respect, and the way we treat each other in moments of impatience. You might think this is just a random encounter, a mistake in the heat of the moment. But by the time you finish this video, you'll realize there's so much more beneath the surface. You're about to witness how one small, seemingly inconsequential action can snowball into something far bigger than you could ever imagine. And the question is, will you be the one to learn from the story, or will you be the one who suffers the consequences of a moment of frustration? As the story progresses, the seemingly simple moment of frustration begins to unravel into something far deeper, something that nobody could have predicted. To truly understand the full scope of what's at play here, we need to take a step back and look at the lives of the two characters involved in this unexpected encounter. Let's start with the driver. On the surface, they seem like just another face in the daily grind of city life, someone who's trying to get from point A to point B, navigating the maze of traffic that clogs the streets every morning. Their life isn't much different from anyone else's. They wake up, get dressed, grab a coffee, and head to work. But beneath this routine is a growing sense of restlessness. This isn't the life they envision for themselves. They're stuck in a job they don't like, a job they feel is going nowhere. They're constantly frustrated, always looking for ways to speed up their life, to get ahead, to escape the feeling that they're just running in circles. The honk, in a way, was a reflection of their inner turmoil. It was a release of the pressure that had been building up in their mind for days, weeks, maybe even longer. But in that moment, they had no idea how a single action, a single second of impatience, was about to send ripples through their life that they couldn't control. But why did they act that way? Why did they honk at a senior citizen, knowing full well that it could be seen as rude or inconsiderate? What's the reason behind this seemingly small but crucial moment of interaction? Could it be that they were subconsciously reacting to a recent series of disappointments in their own life? Maybe they had just been passed over for a promotion they desperately wanted. Maybe they had received bad news about a personal matter that had shaken them to their core. It's easy to dismiss the honk as a small thing, a momentary lapse in judgment, but it's important to realize that in the context of the driver's life, it's a symptom of something much bigger. Now, let's turn our attention to the senior. What do we know about them? At first glance, they might seem like just another elderly person crossing the street, slow, deliberate, perhaps a little frail. But that's where the mystery begins to deepen. What if this person wasn't just some random senior struggling to cross a busy intersection? What if this person had a past that connected them to something far more significant? It turns out that the senior wasn't just your average retiree, enjoying their golden years in peace. No, this was someone who had lived a life full of unexpected twists and turns, a life that most people would have never guessed by simply looking at them. They had been part of something that, until now, remained buried deep in the past. Something they didn't want anyone to know about, especially not a frustrated driver like the one who had just honked at them. As the senior made their way across the street, they didn't just see an impatient driver. They saw someone they recognized. Someone whose name they knew, whose life they had been following for reasons they couldn't easily explain. There was no immediate recognition on the driver's part, of course, but to the senior, it was as if the universe had conspired to bring them together at that exact moment. Now, I know what you're thinking. How could that be? How could a senior, seemingly just going about their day, have such a deep connection to the driver? Was it coincidence? Was it fate? Or was it something else entirely? That's where the red herrings begin to emerge. Maybe the senior wasn't even the person who was connected to the driver. Maybe it was someone else, a neighbor, a friend, or even a stranger who had been following the driver's every move from the shadows. The more you think about it, the more you realize that nothing is as it seems. And then there's the matter of the senior's past. What exactly was it that they had been involved in all those years ago? Could it be related to something that happened long before the driver was even born? What if their path had crossed the driver's without them even knowing? Was the senior just a victim of bad timing, or was there a deeper reason why they crossed paths with this particular person that day? Maybe the senior had been keeping tabs on the driver for months, watching them from afar, learning their routines. It could be that they were looking for the right moment, the right time to confront them. But why? What was the senior's agenda, and why had they been so focused on this driver? As you can imagine, things are beginning to spiral into a web of uncertainty. The more questions that arise, the more layers of doubt begin to form. Was the honking incident just the tip of the iceberg? Or was it the final piece of a puzzle that had been slowly coming together, piece by piece, over the course of years? And what about the other people who might be involved in this mystery? Is there someone else, lurking in the background, who knows more than they're letting on? Could it be that there's a whole network of people whose lives have been intertwined for far longer than anyone realized? The tension continues to build, and with each new clue that emerges, the story becomes even more complicated. Every new possibility only adds more questions to the mix, and just when you think you might have figured it out, another twist is thrown into the equation. You can feel the suspense mounting, each moment leading to the inevitable conclusion. But you're not there yet. The mystery is far from solved. What happens next is going to take you deeper into the unknown, and trust me, you won't want to miss what's coming next.
So, stay with me.
Keep watching, because what happens in the next part of the story will leave you questioning everything you thought you knew. And trust me when I say, it's only going to get more intense from here. As the investigation into the mysterious encounter begins to unfold, the tension only intensifies. The driver, now realizing that this moment was far more significant than they originally thought, decides to look deeper into the senior's past. They start asking questions, trying to piece together the clues, but what they don't know is that someone, maybe more than one person, doesn't want them to uncover the truth. There's an invisible wall closing in, and with each step they take toward finding answers, more obstacles appear, blocking their path in ways they could never have predicted. The first of these obstacles comes when the driver attempts to track down any records that might shed light on the senior's past. They manage to dig up a few bits of information, some newspaper clippings, and some old public records. But just as they think they're about to find something solid, a key piece of evidence goes missing. One of the articles they found, an old photograph that seemed to hold the answer to a mystery they hadn't fully understood, vanishes. It's as if it was never there at all. They search their apartment, their car, even retrace their steps to the library where they originally found it. But it's gone. The photograph has disappeared without a trace, leaving behind nothing but confusion and frustration. It doesn't make sense. Was it an accident? Or is someone actively trying to prevent them from uncovering the truth? This isn't the only strange thing that happens. As the driver digs deeper, they receive a warning. It's an anonymous message, a cryptic text sent from an unknown number. Stop looking into this. You don't want to know what happened. At first, the driver thinks it's just some prank, maybe someone trying to scare them off. But then they realize the message is too specific, too pointed. It's as if the sender knows exactly what they've been investigating. But who could it be? Who would be keeping such a close eye on them, monitoring their every move? As the days go by, the sense of unease grows. The driver starts to question everyone around them. A close friend who's been supportive throughout the investigation starts acting strangely, distracted, nervous, even avoiding them altogether. The driver tries to brush it off, but the feeling of suspicion lingers. Could this friend be involved somehow? Could they know more than they're letting on? Or are they just caught in the middle of something they have no control over? And then there's the senior. As the driver gets closer to the truth, they start receiving odd phone calls. No one speaks, but they can hear the faint sound of breathing on the other end. The calls seem to come at random times, and they only stop when the driver decides to confront the senior directly. But when they meet face to face, something isn't right. The senior seems to know more than they're letting on, but they refuse to speak about it. There's a strange tension in the air, as if they're both aware that something significant is about to unfold, but neither of them is ready to fully acknowledge it. The senior's eyes hold a story, a history that's been buried for too long. They're hiding something big. And then, just when the driver thinks they're finally getting somewhere, they discover something that shakes them to their core. A hidden betrayal, a connection to the senior they never saw coming. It turns out that someone close to the driver, someone they trusted, has been involved in a secret operation, one that dates back years. This operation, whatever it was, ties directly to the senior's past, and it's clear that the driver's investigation has begun to uncover long-buried secrets that someone, somewhere, is desperately trying to keep hidden. But the more the driver digs, the more they begin to feel like they're being drawn into something much bigger than themselves. Something dangerous. Something that could put their life at risk. There's no turning back now. As the driver uncovers pieces of the puzzle, the pieces don't fit in the way they expected. The lines between right and wrong blur, and the more they learn, the more they realize they're not just dealing with a random act of road rage. This isn't just a story about a honk or a slow-crossing senior. It's about a secret past event, one that the senior has been hiding for years. Something so important, so explosive, that it has the potential to unravel everything the driver thought they knew about their own life. The stakes have been raised, And now the driver finds themselves trapped in a web of lies, deception, and betrayal. They don't know who to trust anymore, and the people they thought they could count on are suddenly acting strangely. There's a sense of danger in the air, an invisible threat closing in with every passing moment. And as the driver struggles to put the pieces together, they can't help but wonder, who is playing them? Who's been pulling the strings behind the scenes all along? As they stare at the mess they've uncovered, a chilling realization dawns on them. The senior was never just a bystander. They were part of something much bigger, something that's been operating in the shadows for years. And now, it's up to the driver to figure out just how deep this rabbit hole goes. But there's one final, unresolved twist that leaves the driver and everyone watching frozen in suspense. The senior, once an ordinary pedestrian, may not be the only one with secrets. What if the person the driver has been investigating all along is not the real mastermind? What if the senior was just a pawn in a game that the driver never even knew existed? What happens when the driver finally uncovers the truth and realizes that the most dangerous part of this mystery was hiding in plain sight all along? As the driver is left grappling with the terrifying implications of their findings, the tension continues to rise, not just for them, but for everyone around them. Just when it seems like they might be closing in on the truth, another layer of complexity is added to the mystery, a new twist that complicates everything they thought they knew. The driver, still haunted by the strange events and hidden betrayals surrounding the senior, is trying to process what they've uncovered. But as they attempt to make sense of it all, they receive an unexpected visit from an old acquaintance, someone they had almost forgotten about. This person, a former colleague who had disappeared from their life years ago, suddenly reappears, offering cryptic words that seem to hold the key to a deeper truth, one that threatens to shatter everything they've pieced together so far. The acquaintance claims to know something about the senior, something that wasn't in the public records, something no one else could have possibly known. But what really stands out is the warning they give. Be careful who you trust, they say, because the people closest to you might be the ones pulling the strings behind all this. The words hit the driver like a ton of bricks. It's unsettling, especially because the driver has always prided themselves on being able to read people, on being able to tell who's trustworthy and who's not. But now, after everything that's happened, they realize they don't know who to trust anymore. This new message only deepens the mystery and heightens the paranoia. Could it be true? Could someone they've been working with, someone they've known for years, actually be part of this tangled web of deception? The stakes are now higher than ever. The more the driver uncovers, the more they realize that the senior's past isn't the only one that's connected to this strange and sinister web. It turns out that their own life, their own history, is far more intertwined with this unfolding drama than they ever could have imagined. A secondary storyline begins to emerge, one that points directly back to the driver themselves. As they dig deeper, they uncover an old connection, a long-forgotten event that links them to the very same forces they've been investigating. It's a realization that leaves them shaken to the core. They aren't just an observer in this mystery, they're an active participant, and someone or something is manipulating their every move. But just when they think they might have a handle on things, a shocking new piece of evidence contradicts everything they believed. A confidential document, something they thought they had securely locked away, is suddenly sitting on their desk, as though someone placed it there deliberately. The document, detailing an unsolved case from years ago, contains a name they thought they had left behind long ago. The name is connected to a crime that was thought to have been solved, a case that was buried in the past. But now, with this new information in their hands, it becomes clear that the case was never closed, not really. There were loose ends, fragments of the past that were deliberately erased. And those fragments have somehow led right back to the senior. The question now is, how does this all tie together? What are the hidden connections that have been deliberately obscured, and who is responsible for burying the truth? The driver begins to feel the weight of their investigation bearing down on them, and the sense of dread intensifies. Every step they take seems to lead them into deeper, more dangerous territory, and the closer they get to uncovering the truth, the more they realize they're not just digging into someone else's secrets, they're digging into their own past, a past they had long since tried to forget. And with every new discovery, the people around them, those they trust, those they thought they knew, begin to act increasingly suspicious. What if the people closest to them have been hiding things all along, things that could shatter everything they thought they knew about themselves and the world around them? In the midst of this mounting tension, the driver receives another message. This time, it's not a warning, but a direct threat. The message simply reads, "Stay away from this, or you'll regret it." The words are chilling, and they don't come from an anonymous source, but from someone the driver recognizes, someone they thought had no connection to the situation at all. It's a person who has been part of their life for years, someone they've relied on for support, someone they trusted completely. But now, with this message, the driver realizes that they've been deceived. This person has been lying to them, hiding something critical, and their role in this mystery is far more significant than anyone could have predicted. With every new twist, the mystery grows more complex. The driver feels trapped in a maze of lies and deceit, and they begin to question everyone's motives. Are they being manipulated? Or are they simply too close to the truth for their own good? The deeper they go, the more dangerous the investigation becomes, and now, more than ever, they need to figure out who they can trust. But with each new revelation, it seems that the people they thought were allies may not be. Everyone has their own agenda, their own secrets, and as the pieces of the puzzle begin to fit together, it becomes clear that the truth is far more elusive and far more dangerous than anyone could have imagined. The tension in the air is palpable, and every decision the driver makes seems to lead to more complications. They can't help but feel that they're being watched, that every move they make is being tracked, and that someone is just waiting for them to slip up. As they continue to dig into the past, uncovering connections and hidden motives, they realize that the stakes are higher than they ever could have predicted. The danger is no longer just about uncovering secrets, it's about survival. And just when they think they might be getting close to the heart of the mystery, the one thing they least expect happens. They lose contact with the one person who might have had the answers they need. This person, who had been helping them navigate the labyrinth of lies, suddenly vanishes. No calls, no texts, no sign of them anywhere. And the driver, left in the dark, is left to wonder, has this person been playing them all along? Or has something far more sinister happened to them? As the driver's investigation delves deeper into the web of secrets, a darkness begins to seep into their every waking moment, and the weight of what they're uncovering becomes impossible to ignore. The sense of urgency is palpable, pressing down on them like a vice. They've been following a trail of breadcrumbs, convinced that they're on the brink of uncovering something monumental, but with each new piece of the puzzle, the danger grows more real, more immediate. It's no longer just about solving a mystery. It's about survival. Something shifts in the atmosphere around them, like a predator closing in. And as the driver walks this increasingly dangerous path, the consequences of their actions start to take shape in the most terrifying ways imaginable. The first sign that things have taken a darker turn happens late one night, after the driver has spent hours combing through old records, trying to make sense of the tangled connections they've uncovered. They're exhausted, their eyes heavy with the strain of sleepless nights, when suddenly, a sharp knock on the door startles them. For a brief moment, they freeze. No one ever knocks at this hour. They weren't expecting anyone. Cautiously, they make their way to the door, their heart pounding in their chest. When they open it, there's no one there, just a small envelope lying on the doorstep. They pick it up, their fingers trembling slightly as they tear it open. Inside, there's nothing but a single sentence written in bold, black ink. You're not as safe as you think. There's no signature, no return address, just those chilling words. The message sends a shiver down their spine. It's a warning, but from who? And why now? The driver stands there for a moment, staring at the envelope, their mind racing. They try to brush it off, tell themselves it's just another anonymous threat, the kind that's common when you're getting too close to the truth. But deep down, they can't shake the feeling that this message is different. This time, something feels real. Something feels personal. The fear starts to sink in, slowly at first, like a quiet whisper in the back of their mind. It wasn't just the envelope. It was the look in their friend's eyes earlier that day, the way they had seemed so distant, so anxious. It was the strange phone call they received a few hours ago, a call that ended abruptly, without a word being spoken. The feeling that they were being watched, that someone had been following them for days, was starting to become undeniable. The shadows seemed to linger a little longer. The creak of floorboards seemed louder than usual, and every car that passed by their house felt like it was moving too slowly, too deliberately. They couldn't stop the gnawing sense that someone, somewhere, had their eyes fixed squarely on them. The following morning, the driver decides to check in with a few people who have been helping them with the investigation. The last thing they expect is to find that someone close to them has disappeared. It's their former colleague, the one who had resurfaced earlier with cryptic warnings. They've been in touch regularly, sharing leads and discussing the next steps, but now, their colleague's phone goes straight to voicemail. No text messages, no emails. Nothing. It's as if they've just vanished off the face of the earth. Panic begins to set in as the driver retraces their steps, trying to think of anyone who might have had a motive to make their colleague disappear. Who would go to such lengths to silence them? And more importantly, why? The questions swirl in their mind, but there's no time to answer them. Not when the realization hits that they might be next. The fear tightens around their chest, and for the first time, the driver feels the full weight of the situation. It's not just an investigation anymore. It's not just a mystery to solve. They are part of something much larger, something far more dangerous than they ever imagined. Their every move is being monitored, and every question they ask only leads them deeper into a shadowy world that doesn't just hide the truth, but actively seeks to bury it. The more they dig, the more it becomes clear that there are powerful forces at play, and they are not playing by any rules. The driver's thoughts become consumed with what could happen next. They start to question everything. Every phone call, every knock on the door, every person they come into contact with. Are they being followed? Are they being watched even now? They find themselves looking over their shoulder as they walk down the street, constantly scanning the crowd for any sign of danger. They're not just afraid anymore. They're terrified. The dread has settled in like a dark cloud that won't lift. And with that terror comes the gut-wrenching realization that they may have already crossed a point of no return. As the hours pass, the driver's paranoia starts to unravel their focus. Their mind races, jumping from one thought to the next, unable to find a clear path. What happens if they push forward? What happens if they stop digging and let the mystery go? Will the threat stop? Will the danger subside? Or will it only get worse? They can't afford to ignore it now, though. They can't stop until they know the truth. But every step they take feels like a step closer to an invisible precipice. And deep inside, they know whatever's waiting at the end of this investigation won't just change their life. It could cost them everything. The final blow comes when the driver, unable to shake the feeling that they're being watched, goes to the police for help. They tell their story, explain the strange messages, the missing people, the threats. But when they ask for protection or guidance, the officer's reaction isn't what they expect. The officer listens, nods, and then says, "We'll look into it." But there's something in their eyes. Something the driver can't quite place. It's the way they hesitate before looking away, the way their voice wavers just slightly. It's enough to make the driver wonder, is the police department involved? Or is it just another dead end? With the walls closing in, the driver knows one thing for certain. They are no longer in control. They're part of something far darker, and the question isn't just how to solve the mystery. It's whether they'll survive long enough to uncover the truth. The paranoia, the fear, it all melds together in a storm of confusion and dread. And as the days wear on, the driver starts to lose track of where the investigation ends and their own sanity begins. But one thing is clear. Someone is out there, someone who knows exactly what they're doing, and someone who won't stop until the driver is silenced. Just when the driver believes they're at the edge of unraveling the twisted web that's been closing in around them, a moment arrives that shatters everything they thought they knew. The tension, which had been building relentlessly, hits a boiling point when a familiar face reappears, the one person they had placed the most trust in throughout this entire nightmare. This person, a longtime friend who had been with them from the beginning of the investigation, had always seemed like an ally. They had worked together, shared insights, and even offered advice when the road ahead seemed too murky. But now, as they sit across from the driver, their expression is cold, calculating, nothing like the friendly, supportive person they once were. The words that spill from their lips are a bombshell that changes everything. "I know who's been behind all of this," the friend says, the tone of their voice so composed it feels almost rehearsed. The driver's heart skips a beat, thinking they've finally reached the moment of clarity, the final revelation that will put all the pieces in place. But what happens next is a complete gut punch. It was never about the senior, the friend continues, locking eyes with the driver, their gaze steady and unnervingly direct. The senior was just the distraction. The real target was you. The words land like a punch to the gut, and for a moment, the driver can't process what they've just heard. Their mind spins trying to make sense of it all. The senior, who had been the focal point of the investigation, who had seemed to hold the key to everything, was just a decoy? A pawn in a much bigger game? Their trust in the friend, someone they thought had been by their side, someone they had relied on through every twist and turn, evaporates in an instant. But it's the next revelation that knocks the driver off balance entirely. "I was hired to keep you digging," the friend admits, their voice dropping to a near whisper, as if they're confessing to something far darker than just manipulation. "But it wasn't just about keeping you distracted. It was about pushing you closer to the truth, because you're part of something much bigger than you realize. And someone needs to make sure that truth never sees the light of day." The room feels smaller now, suffocating, as the driver struggles to process what's happening. The mystery they thought they were solving, the investigation they had dedicated themselves to, was never what it seemed. The person they trusted most had been playing them all along, and now the very foundation of the investigation is crumbling beneath them. They feel the walls close in, their breath coming in short gasps as they try to find the words to respond. But it's too late. The truth, as it turns out, was never going to be simple. With each new layer peeled back, the driver begins to understand that the clues they thought were leading them to an answer were deliberately placed to mislead them. Their friend, the one who had been by their side, the one they had trusted, had been orchestrating the entire investigation from the shadows, manipulating them into digging deeper into a past they had no idea was tied to their own. Every phone call, every warning, every cryptic message was part of a larger plan, designed to lure the driver into a trap. The fear, the tension, the paranoia, they were all part of the process. And now, with this bombshell revelation, the driver realizes the stakes have changed completely. They're not just trying to solve a mystery anymore. They're in the middle of a game that's been rigged from the start, and the consequences of losing are far more severe than they ever imagined. The driver's hands tremble as they look at their friend, now revealed as a key player in a much larger, far more dangerous conspiracy. But the revelation doesn't stop there. "You think you've been tracking the truth," the friend says with a twisted smile, "but the truth has been right in front of you the whole time. It was never about the senior or the documents you found. It's about you. And now, you're in too deep." The words hit like a sledgehammer. They can't shake the feeling that everything, every piece of the investigation, every person they've encountered, every clue they've followed, has been carefully designed to lead them to this very moment. The fear that had been growing inside them all along transforms into a cold, hard certainty. They are trapped in a game they didn't even know they were playing. And the stakes? Their life, their freedom, maybe even their sanity itself. As the driver tries to come to terms with this shocking new reality, another thought strikes them. If their friend was involved, if they were part of this elaborate plot, then who else is? The more they think about it, the more they realize that almost everyone they've come into contact with might have had a role to play in this web of deceit. The senior? Just another pawn. The missing colleague? Another piece of the puzzle. And now their friend, the person they trusted most, was the architect of the whole thing. The realization is enough to make the driver question everything they've done up until now. Had they ever been in control? Or had they simply been a puppet, dancing to someone else's tune? The questions flood their mind, but there's no time to answer them. As the truth unravels, the danger becomes more immediate. Someone, somewhere, is watching, and they're not done yet. The driver knows one thing for certain. They've stumbled into a conspiracy that's far beyond their ability to control, and the people pulling the strings will stop at nothing to make sure the truth stays buried. The days blur into each other, each one heavier than the last, as the driver spirals further into this labyrinth of deceit and danger. The weight of the revelations that have unfolded presses down on them relentlessly, making it harder to breathe, harder to think clearly. The world they once knew, the world where everything made sense, has shattered completely. Every relationship, every person they've trusted, has become suspect. Even the simple act of walking down the street feels like an exercise in survival. They know they're being watched, followed, and yet the real question has shifted. Who is watching them, and why are they being hunted? The phone calls, the messages, the strange encounters in dark alleys, they're all a part of the same twisted game. But the more the driver tries to unravel the mystery, the more tangled it becomes, and the more they realize that they're not just facing external threats, they're being betrayed by the very people they've relied on. And now, the pressure reaches a breaking point, forcing the driver into an impossible position. It begins with a conversation that they never saw coming. Sitting in a dimly lit coffee shop with their longtime partner, someone who's been by their side through thick and thin, the driver feels the weight of the moment hanging over them like an executioner's axe. The partner's face is unreadable, their eyes avoiding the driver's gaze as if they already know the question that's about to be asked. And yet, the silence between them is deafening, thick with the unspoken tension of years of trust now in question. "Did you know about this?" The driver's voice breaks through the stillness, their eyes searching the face of the person they've shared everything with, every fear, every secret, every truth. The question hangs in the air like a poisoned dart, and the partner's eyes shift, just slightly, before their lips part to speak. "What are you talking about?" The response is cold, guarded, too guarded. The driver knows that tone. It's the kind of response someone gives when they're trying to avoid the truth, when they're trying to hide something too dangerous to admit. The driver's pulse quickens, their hands clenching into fists, knuckles white. "Don't lie to me. I know you've been involved in this. You've been working with them, haven't you?" The words feel like a slap in the face, but it's the truth, isn't it? They can feel it in their gut, the heavy weight of betrayal pressing in on them. But the partner doesn't answer right away. Instead, there's a long, tense pause, one that feels like it stretches on forever, before they finally speak. "Maybe I have. Maybe I haven't." The words are cryptic, filled with a quiet finality that cuts deeper than any direct denial could have. "But what I can tell you is this. You're in too deep now. If you keep pushing, if you keep digging into this, you're not just putting yourself at risk. You're putting everyone at risk. And the people who are pulling the strings? They won't hesitate to do whatever it takes to silence you. To silence all of us." The driver's mind races, the pieces falling into place in ways they hadn't anticipated. It's one thing to suspect betrayal, to feel it creeping up on you, but it's entirely another to hear it out loud from the mouth of someone you once trusted with your life. The weight of the ultimatum begins to settle in like a stone sinking to the pit of their stomach. "What do you mean? Are you saying you're part of this? That you've been working with them the whole time?" The words come out sharper now, filled with disbelief and rage. The partner hesitates again, and when they finally speak, it's with a sad, resigned tone. "Not exactly. I didn't want this. I didn't want any of this. But sometimes, there's no way out. You think you're in control, but when you're dealing with people who have more power than you could ever imagine, they don't give you a choice. I didn't have a choice, and neither do you. So, I'm telling you now, leave it alone. Walk away. The truth? It's not worth it anymore." The driver can feel their heart pounding in their chest, the walls closing in around them. It's a choice they never expected to have to make, safety or truth. Walk away, let it all go, and protect themselves, their family, their friends from the darkness they've uncovered, or keep going, no matter the cost, and risk everything to uncover a truth that could destroy them all. The choice is suffocating, its weight unbearable. And as the partner looks at them, their eyes now full of something the driver can't quite read, the question hangs in the air, a heavy silence between them. Leave it alone, and I'll help you get out. We can disappear. We can start fresh. No one needs to get hurt. You don't have to keep going down this path. But the driver isn't sure they can do that anymore. The thought of walking away feels like a betrayal to everything they've worked for, everything they've uncovered. The truth, however ugly, however dangerous, is pulling them in like a magnet. They know they can't turn back now. Not after everything. The danger is real, but so is the need for answers. Is that what you really want? The driver asks, their voice shaking with the weight of everything they've learned. To run? To leave this behind? After all we've uncovered. For the briefest of moments, the partner's face hardens and the driver can see the flicker of something in their eyes, something close to fear. You think this is easy for me? They snap, their voice tight. You think I want this? You think I want to live in the shadow of the choices I've made?
No.
I'm telling you this because I know how this ends. And I don't want to see you destroyed like I will be. If you keep going, if you don't walk away now. But the driver can't listen anymore. The ultimatum has been made, the choice is clear, and yet they know they cannot walk away. Not without answers, not without the truth. The weight of that decision sits heavy on their chest, their thoughts racing as the tension builds to a breaking point. The partner stands up, their expression grim. Then you've made your choice. The words hang in the air, heavy and final. But don't say I didn't warn you. As the partner walks away, leaving the driver alone with their thoughts, the conflict feels more intense than ever. The choice between truth and safety, between the future they want and the future they're being pushed into, has never been more impossible. But as the door closes behind them, the driver knows one thing for certain. They can't stop now. The truth is still out there, lurking in the shadows, and they can't let it go. Not when it could expose everything. But they also know, deep down, that whatever path they choose from here, it will come at a price. And that price may be higher than they're ready to pay. Everything the driver thought they knew shatters in the blink of an eye. What began as a single, jarring moment, an impatient honk at a slow-moving senior crossing the street, has now unraveled into something far more sinister, far-reaching, and rooted in deception, so deep it touches nearly every corner of their life. The walls feel like they're caving in, and with each hour that passes, the scope of the conspiracy becomes harder to ignore.
This isn't just about them.
It never was. The signs were there, buried beneath layers of everyday normalcy. The familiar faces, the harmless encounters, the small inconsistencies they once brushed aside, all of them now reveal a deeper, more coordinated operation. The illusion of safety is gone, replaced by the cold realization that the people closest to them were never who they claimed to be. It starts with a name, one that pops up unexpectedly in a sealed file they managed to retrieve after weeks of dead ends and half-truths. It's not just some faceless bureaucrat or corporate executive. It's someone they've known for years, someone who's been quietly feeding them breadcrumbs while steering them away from the real truth. A mentor, a friend, a person who had always shown up with perfect timing, who'd always had just the right thing to say, who seemed to know more than they ever should have. Now, seeing that name tied to a network of surveillance operations, asset transfers, and blackmail schemes, the driver feels physically ill. Their hands tremble as they scroll through lines of data, phone logs, and photos. This isn't just betrayal, it's weaponized trust. And it doesn't stop there. As the driver digs deeper, more names surface, some from childhood, others from their current circle. Coworkers, old friends, even neighbors they've waved to every morning without suspicion. The web of involvement is staggering. It's as if every aspect of their life has been quietly monitored and manipulated by a hidden system built to control outcomes, shape decisions, and protect something massive. Something dangerous. Something rooted in the kind of power that can't be traced with fingerprints or bank statements. A power that exists in the gray zones, behind shell companies, encrypted servers, off-the-books contracts. A system so elaborate that it's no longer clear whether the people involved are doing this out of choice or fear. The driver barely sleeps now. They spend their nights cross-referencing data, decoding obscure messages, and watching their back. Every knock on the door makes them flinch. Every unexpected sound outside makes them reach for the burner phone tucked under their pillow. They know their time is running out. Something big is coming, and every thread they pull makes them more of a target. Their only advantage is their growing clarity. They're finally seeing the machine for what it really is. But clarity doesn't offer safety. It only increases the pressure to act before it's too late. Then, without warning, everything accelerates. One night, a coded message pings their encrypted inbox. It's not from any of the contacts they've built during their search. This one is anonymous, untraceable, but chillingly specific. It contains only 4 words: "You missed the signal." Attached is a grainy security camera still of them just days ago, walking into a convenience store. But they're not alone in the frame. Standing a few feet behind them, face turned just slightly toward the camera, is someone they'd trusted completely. Someone they'd confided in. Someone who had cried with them over the death of a loved one and had sworn to help them bring down the people behind all of this. And now, there they are, holding a phone to their ear, wearing the same watch the driver had given them for their birthday. Smiling. It's not just betrayal anymore, it's theater. It's manipulation on a level that feels almost inhuman. The driver feels like they're suffocating under the weight of it. They rush to their car, heart racing, gripping the steering wheel so hard their knuckles turn white. The roads blur past as they try to process the truth. The conspiracy is bigger than them. It always has been. They were chosen, not because of what they knew, but because of what they represented. A threat. A loose end. An unpredictable variable in a carefully choreographed operation that was meant to stay buried forever. When they finally confront the person in the photo, it's not in anger, it's in quiet desperation. "Why?" they ask, the question barely escaping their lips. The reply is a whisper, but it cuts like glass. "Because I believed in it once, too." But belief doesn't protect you. Silence does. That's when it hits the driver. This isn't just a matter of corruption or control. This is about survival. The system they're up against is built on fear, enforced through silence, and funded by a network of players who thrive in the shadows. And the only way out is through it. But what happens next forces everything into a freefall. They receive a live video feed, someone they care about, bound and blindfolded, in an undisclosed location. The message is crystal clear. Stop digging or lose everything. The stakes have gone beyond their own life. Now, the lives of others are being used as leverage. People are watching their every move, and one wrong step could mean someone doesn't make it home. Now, the driver has to decide not just whether to keep going, but how far they're willing to go to end this. Who can they trust when every ally could be an enemy in disguise? How do they fight a war when the battlefield is invisible and the rules are written in secret? The truth is finally surfacing, but it's wrapped in danger, deception, and choices that will define the rest of their life. One move could expose the entire system. One mistake could destroy everything. And time is running out. It was just past midnight when the driver stood in front of the abandoned city power station, its rusted gates and dim, flickering floodlights painting a perfect scene of decay. Everything had led to this place, this final confrontation that had been hiding in plain sight beneath the noise of daily life. Their heart pounded in their chest like a war drum as the freezing wind cut through their jacket, but it wasn't the cold that made them tremble. It was the knowledge that after tonight, there would be no more running, no more guessing. Every mystery, every betrayal, every unanswered question was about to find its final breath. Somewhere beyond those shadows was the truth they had nearly destroyed their life to find, and the person who had orchestrated every moment of this madness from the shadows. The footage, the manipulation, the silence of people who had once meant something to them, it all pointed here. Inside the structure, the air was thick with dust and the scent of old wires and machine oil. Footsteps echoed faintly in the corridors, but none belonged to the driver. The silence itself seemed intentional, staged. As they moved deeper into the labyrinth of rooms and corridors, something shifted in their gut. This place wasn't just a hideout or a control center, it was a memory. They'd been here before as a child. Their father had once worked at this station before it was shut down. And now, after all these years, It had become the beating heart of a conspiracy that had consumed their life. It wasn't coincidence. It was design. They weren't just a threat to the operation, they were part of its origin. In the final room, the driver found the man they'd only known in whispers and encrypted messages. He was seated at a long table littered with surveillance photos, voice transcripts, and documents that detailed years of manipulation. The man didn't flinch when the driver entered. He didn't threaten or posture. Instead, he smiled, warmly, almost fatherly. "You finally made it," he said, his voice calm, almost too calm. "You were always meant to find your way here." The confrontation that followed wasn't explosive. It was surgical. The driver demanded the truth, and the man laid it out like a blueprint. The conspiracy had started decades ago, born out of a national security contract designed to predict behavioral threats through real-world observation. It had morphed into something far darker, a silent network that manipulated lives to preserve influence and power. The people closest to the driver had been used as handlers and informants, some willingly, others coerced. Their job was to test the limits of compliance, to see how much an average citizen could endure before breaking. The driver, unknowingly, had been the ultimate case study. But there was one final piece that shattered everything. The man slid a thin file across the table. Inside was a photograph of the driver's mother, smiling, radiant, standing next to the very man who now confessed to orchestrating this entire operation. "She wasn't who you thought she was," he whispered. "She was one of us. And she wanted you to be stronger than we ever were." The revelation landed like a bomb. Every memory, every story told at bedtime, every quiet warning now took on a different color. The driver's mother had been part of the system, and her death, long believed to be the result of a random accident, had actually been the first defection. She'd tried to leave, to take her child with her, and they had let her die for it. Enraged but composed, the driver pressed the final card they had left, a recording. It was audio from earlier that day, a phone call between two remaining operatives. One of them panicked. The operation was unraveling. Files had been leaked to an independent news outlet. Their anonymity was crumbling. They were preparing to burn everything, disappear, start over somewhere else. The driver had known that confronting this man would be the last opportunity to stop the reset. But now, with this evidence and the names tied to it, the entire network could go public. The man across the table leaned back and exhaled slowly. "You can end this," he said. "But understand, if you do, what rises in its place may be worse. We kept order. We protected the narrative. Without that, chaos will fill the vacuum." It was a psychological trap, appealing to fear, to uncertainty. But the driver saw it for what it was, desperation wrapped in prophecy. And as they stepped back, reaching for the burner phone that would send the final file to the news outlet, something inside them finally broke free. The silence, the doubt, the years of not knowing, it all shattered in that single decision. But just as they pressed the send command, the final twist arrived. Not from the man, but from the shadows behind them. A quiet voice, familiar and cold, cut through the silence. "I told you to stop digging." They turned. It was the same person who had once wept beside them. The same person who had given them strength, who had seemed broken by the same truths. And now they stood there, weapon drawn, hand steady. "You were never supposed to make it this far," they said. "We needed someone to take the fall. You were perfect." Before the driver could react, a sudden blast rocked the building from the other side. Emergency lights flickered on, and the sound of approaching sirens tore through the distance. The betrayal had bought time, but not enough. Law enforcement was closing in, and the driver knew they had to choose: run and save themselves, or stand and expose the rot once and for all. And then, everything went black. It took 6 weeks before the world caught up with what really happened that night. The explosion had made headlines across multiple states, with early reports spinning it as an accident at an abandoned power facility, nothing more than faulty wiring and years of structural neglect. But those who looked closer, who paid attention to the buried details, the silence from certain government departments, the sudden disappearance of public records, knew there was more. Somewhere between the blacked-out documents and the digital trail that led to corrupted files and scrubbed footage, there remained a single thread that refused to be cut. The anonymous whistleblower who sent a data drop to multiple investigative journalists at the exact moment of the explosion. And in that leak, buried under technical jargon and redacted summaries, were names. Real names. Photos. Bank records. Secret meetings in D.C. and Phoenix and Houston. Evidence of a long-standing network that had profited off the manipulation of social behavior and psychological warfare on its own citizens, all under the guise of maintaining national harmony. The driver, now known only by a pseudonym leaked to the press, was never found in the aftermath. Surveillance at the site had mysteriously gone dark for a 2-hour window before first responders arrived, and no remains matching their DNA were ever discovered. Some speculated they died in the blast, while others insisted they'd escaped just in time, vanishing into the world they once trusted, determined to finally live beyond the reach of those who tried to control them. In the months that followed, scattered pieces of their life began surfacing across social media under fake usernames, quotes from books they loved, coded references to places they once mentioned only in passing. For those who had followed the story closely, it felt like breadcrumbs, a silent signal that they were alive, watching, waiting. Congressional hearings were held, but predictably, the most incriminating parts were classified or deflected. A few lower-level operatives took the fall, names the public had never heard before, sacrifices made to protect the core machinery from exposure. The man at the heart of it all, the one who'd revealed the truth to the driver inside the power station, was never officially linked to anything. His name disappeared from public records just days after the incident. Some claimed he fled the country. Others said he was silenced by his own people. But the truth remained murky, just out of reach, as if the system had built itself to ensure that no matter how deep you dug, you'd always stop just before the roots. For those closest to the driver, especially those who'd betrayed them, life changed in quieter, more permanent ways. Some quit their jobs and left their cities. One was found in a motel room outside Reno, a note beside her that simply read, "We all break eventually." Another, once their best friend and secret handler, tried to spin a redemption arc online, but was quickly exposed and vanished from public view. The betrayal had been too deep. The scars, too visible. But the most lasting impact wasn't the scandal or the hearings, or even the slow unraveling of the conspiracy. It was the questions left behind, about how well we really know the people around us, about the line between protection and control, about what we'd sacrifice for truth in a world that rewards silence. Viewers across the country debated the ethics of what the driver had done. Was exposing the operation worth the danger it unleashed? Were they a hero, or just another pawn who broke their programming? Did they find peace? Did they forgive anyone? Were they still watching? One final video surfaced a year later, posted from a remote IP address on an encrypted channel. It showed the silhouette of someone standing on a shoreline at dusk, the wind blowing through their coat, a dog by their side. The camera never moved, never zoomed. But in the background, a voice, faint and familiar, said, "Sometimes the only way out is through. Sometimes the only truth is the one you live by when no one's watching." The screen faded to black, and a single sentence appeared, "You never know who's watching until it's too late." It wasn't just a story about a honk at a crosswalk or a slow-moving senior who seemed to stall traffic at the wrong time. It was about how moments like that, small, seemingly insignificant, can open a door into a world most people never know exists. A world where every choice matters, every connection is a risk, and sometimes the price of truth is everything. And for those still watching, still wondering, maybe that was the point all along.